right, let's see, Jason, what do you think about this? This is speculative, of course, but why do you think it is that the Japanese textbooks don't talk about their harsh treatment of the Koreans, or the Turkish textbooks about the Armenians? Is this their tendentious way of keeping history from their people? Also, has America done anything similar to this, or are they more transparent in admitting they are wrong to the American people? Well, one thing I'll say about this is I just got done talking about this on the in the Ron Paul curriculum. I'm doing Western Civ Part 2, and after World War I, there was a Committee on Intellectual Cooperation established through the League of Nations, and the United States did participate in that, even though it was not a formal member of the League of Nations. And this was formed because intellectuals looked back on their conduct during World War I, and they were really mortified at the way they pushed nationalism over what we might say in a touchy-feely way is international understanding. That they privileged their own version of history, their own people, at the expense of a more impartial overview of history. And so they would elevate their own accomplishments, they would downplay their, we might say, their crimes, and the other side was always made to look like the bad guy. So this Committee on Intellectual Cooperation came together to try to make sure that intellectuals didn't do this anymore, that they acquitted themselves with dignity and with respect for other peoples, and they wanted, as part of this, to do a revision of the textbooks, to make sure that the textbooks were not just full of chauvinism. They wanted to encourage the learning of foreign languages, to encourage the study of foreign cultures in schools, to encourage the student exchange program. All of these things were meant to break down international barriers. And they're all, I think, perfectly respectable ideas, but I'm not sure they entirely succeeded when it came to the textbooks. Now, when I talked to Michael Malice on my show, he's the author of a very interesting book called Dear Reader, the Unauthorized Autobiography of Kim Jong-il of North Korea. Now, of course, the unauthorized autobiography, what does that mean? So he's writing the autobiography as if he were Kim Jong-il. And he's read books that basically nobody in the West has read in order to write this in what seems like the voice of that North Korean leader. And he told me when he was, one of the times he was on my show, that in North Korea, like, there are major historical episodes that are kept from them, that they don't know about. And I'm sorry I'm drawing a blank as to what they are. I've got the transcripts of all my interviews. I'll have to look it up. But I stopped him and said, wait a minute, what? Like, they don't know about, and I'm sorry, it might have been the Holocaust, like some major thing they don't know about at all. It's kept from them. So it still clearly does go on there. Obviously, it would have to be a way of telling their own story at the expense of others. I mean, I know that for a long time, I'm pretty sure in French textbooks, Alsace-Lorraine was portrayed in black on all the maps to indicate that they refused to recognize the German acquisition of Alsace-Lorraine, which had been a territory they'd fought over for some time. So this is a long-standing thing, but I think these days, my sense is that you see less of it, and it's harder to get away with it because everybody has instant access to the truth. If you're looking for the truth, you can find the truth about just about anything. And so the textbook way of learning in general is going by the wayside, and so is the tendentious textbook style of telling history. Now, in terms of the U.S. case, I haven't looked at old history textbooks, so I really don't know how they handled certain issues. But I think that would actually wouldn't that be an interesting study to do? It might even be an interesting doctoral dissertation to look at that. I mean, I don't know how much you can say you really have official textbooks in U.S. history, but you certainly have tellings of U.S. history. I mean, you have the Charles Beard version of U.S. history, very big book. You have Henry Adams, and then going from there, you begin to get professional textbooks. It would be interesting to go and compare these, to look for particular historical episodes. Somebody should do that. Not me, of course, but somebody should do that. Jason, what do you want to add to this?
Well, a couple of things. One thing that I was reminded of reading this question was when you had, I think his name was Sean Gabb on the show,
Oh my gosh, did I get feedback about Sean Gabb?
I figured you probably would have gotten some about him, but one of the things that I thought he said was interesting was when he was talking about the legitimating ideology that the ruling class in Britain used to try to bolster its own authority. And he said that when he was a child, the legitimating ideology was that Britain is this great bastion of civilization, whereas in more recent decades, the legitimating ideology is that, well, Britain used to be the racist, sexist, homophobic, bad guy place, but now we've overcome that. And so one of the ways that that ideology can manifest itself is by pointing to things prior to, say, 1960 and say, see all the bad stuff that used to go on here in our country, and now we've overcome that. We don't do that anymore. And I think to some extent the same thing goes on here in the U.S. But more generally, I would say that it is generally recognized that one of the unique traits of Western civilization is this capacity for self-reflection and the idea that we're sort of critiquing ourselves as we go through the various stages of history. That's an inheritance from the Christian tradition, with the emphasis on examining your life for sin and that kind of thing. And so we see that a lot in the Western tradition, this willingness to offer social criticism and questioning the decisions of people in charge at various points, not even necessarily in just a partisan way, but in the idea that, well, maybe we can do better as a society. And that's something that you just don't see quite as often in some of the other civilizations that are mentioned here in the question.
One of my favorite examples of this, because it is so shocking, is this comes right out of Samuel Eliot Morison, who was the distinguished Harvard historian from the early to mid 20th century, and he said that you could find, it might have been the Algonquins, where their language, they had the same word for enemy that they had for people other than ourselves, and these words were interchangeable with son of the she-dog, like incredibly insulting terms that they used to refer to any people other than themselves. Now, if that's going to be your outlook, it's highly unlikely that you're going to get to a point where you can render impartial moral judgment and put yourself on the scale.